What's up, everyone? We have Mr. Mark Manson in the house today. Welcome to the show.
Hey.
Mark wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and we're going to talk a lot about not giving fucks today. So welcome. Happy to have you on.
Me.
Cool. So Mark and I met through the Brotherhood mastermind that we're a part of. And not only want to talk about not giving fucks, but I want to really dive into the writing process and hear a lot about your process. So let's kind of get like an overview of how you actually came to writing the book, and then we'll dive in from there.
I think the original inspiration for the book was I really wanted to write a book about pain and why pain is important, because I think kind of in the industry that I'm lumped into, the self-help industry, pain is very much seen as something that you're always trying to like get rid of or avoid, you know?
Yeah.
And that this, like, there's this idea, like this perfect happiness that you can, if you just learn the right thing and work hard enough, you can achieve this perfect happiness, and then you'll never feel pain. There'll never be problems. And so I really wanted to write a book that argued for pain. It was like a defense of pain and problems, like basically saying we need pain and problems in our lives, because that's what determines what's important to us. And so everything kind of just extended from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what were you going through in your life that kind of led up to this spark?
Well, I think so. Most of my 20s, I had a lot of kind of conventional goals, I guess, in my 20s. You know, like I wanted to build a business and have financial freedom and like do something, create a career that like I enjoyed a lot, and travel the world and have all these experiences. And so like a lot of what motivated me and drove me in those years was kind of these just conventional goals of like, I want to travel to 5 countries next year, and then like I'd go out and do it. Or like, I want to get my blog readership up to like 100,000 people, and then I would go do it. And I did that for years and years, and I was very successful at a lot of that. And it, after about 7 or 8 years, like I started to realize that like none of this was actually necessarily making anything better. And what I mean by that is like, okay, yeah, it's always like, money's always good. Like we all like money, and we all like fun, and we all like doing new things or being successful at what we do. But like, just like setting out these goals to like for more pleasure or more happiness, like it wasn't actually leading me anywhere that felt meaningful or important. And so I kind of like had this mini existential crisis around like, what's the point of all this? Like, like, why am I working so hard and like traveling so much and doing all this like shit that sounds amazing on paper, but then at the end of the day, I'm kind of like, well, what was the point of that? Like, why did I put so much energy into that?
Yeah.
And so that was kind of, for me personally, that was the starting point. Is like,
Yeah.
okay, like what is actually like, let's back up for a second. Like what actually is important in our lives? Like how do I decide like what actually matters to me?
Yeah. And like, what was it that do you discover that did matter to you?
What I actually started to discover is that, some of the biggest things for me were relationships. And I don't mean like, not just intimate relationships. I mean like friendships. One side effect of being so goal oriented and working so hard all the time and traveling so much, like a lot of my relationships suffered. And I remember I actually wrote an article about this years and years ago. I had this kind of crazy experience where I remember I went to the Taj Mahal, the Great Wall of China, and Machu Picchu all within like 3 months of each other. And in the middle of that, I went home for Christmas, and actually like going home for Christmas was like the best part. And I remember like sitting there and realizing that, and that just blew my mind. I was like,
yeah,
that was actually the best week out of the last 3 months. seeing my childhood friends and like hanging out with my mom. And that was kind of a wake up call. It was like, all right, dude, I think you went overboard here. Like,
Yeah.
like the Great Wall of China is cool, but calm down a second. Like sometimes, one of the points I end up making in the book is that often the things that we consider boring in our lives, they're boring for a reason. It's because they're fundamental to like being a healthy person.
Yeah.
Like hanging out with your mom at Christmas, it sounds really boring because it happens all the time. And the reason it happens all the time is because it's the most important thing you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, I guess I feel like so much of the things, especially, I mean, we'll have conversation about social media, but what we do is about the external validation of our lives. And it sounds like that's what that traveling around the world and all that stuff was feeding.
Yeah. A lot of it was getting caught up in that, like there was, I think one thing that's kind of fascinating with all the technology and the social media stuff now is that I think creating a narrative about ourselves has seemingly become much more important than it used to be, like because everybody now, whatever you're doing with your life, like everybody is potentially aware of it. Like all your friends, all your family, everybody. So it's like it suddenly becomes really important of like making a cool narrative that other people can see. And so, yeah, I think a lot of that, and I don't even think it's conscious. It's not like you sit down, you're like, okay, what's the coolest thing I can do this week? I think it just starts influencing us without even realizing it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we start giving too many fucks about what other people think.
Yeah. And that's been around forever. It's just, I think the internet is just kind of multiplied the opportunities for that. It's like, it's just created so much more potential to like get caught up in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the book talks a lot about that too, in the sense of like really choosing what you actually want to give a fuck about.
Yeah.
What would be your advice in choosing your priorities?
So kind of my go-to advice is actually, most advice is all about like, to make your life better, you should be adding things, like, oh, you should like take on more projects and meet more people and make more money and do more things. And one of the things that I talk about a lot is removing things, even if it's just for a short period of time, because you don't really understand how important something is until it's gone. And a lot of times it's amazing for me in my life. Like I'm often shocked at how removing things or like simply stop doing things like is really terrifying at first, and then after I stop, I'm like, oh wait, my life's actually better. Whereas other things, like there are tons of things that you take for granted, and then all of a sudden you stop doing them, and you realize that, like it makes you miserable. So
yeah, like what would be an example of some things that you gave up and you realize that you missed, and some things that you realize you didn't miss?
So like partying, for instance, like it wasn't even really conscious, but like I think my 25-year-old self would like, if you made him like stay at home and watch Netflix on all weekend, like he would cry, like he'd be like, like what has happened to me? But it was, there was a period a few years ago where I just kind of stopped partying for a while, and I was shocked how much better my life got. And that's not to say that you shouldn't party. That's just to say that I was spending way too much time and energy caring about something that wasn't adding much to my life. Like, I was overvaluing it basically. And then the other example is simple stuff like, seeing old friends or family members, like I went years and years without seeing them and losing touch with a lot of them. And then it wasn't until that happened that I realized like, oh wait, I took these people for granted. I wasn't appreciating them as much. Like they're way more important than I thought they were.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've also realized in the last few years of how important family is.
Yeah.
And as you said, it can be boring.
Yeah, exactly. Like family is one of those things where I think the value, like the part of the problem is the value is not obvious, right? So like, and this is a weird paradoxical thing with like relationships, is that generally the better a relationship is, the more boring it is. Like if you think about all the couples, all the couples that are 70 years old, been married for 40 years and like still happy. They're really fucking boring. Like they've never had any drama. They've never like, you know, neither one of them ever went crazy and like bought a Ferrari with everybody with their savings. Like they've had like what we would consider a boring life, but it's like that's a side effect of them their intimacy being so successful. And I think that comes up with family too. Like yeah, I go home and I hang out with my parents, and by like the third day I'm like, okay, like like when can I go? Like but it's the fact that it's so comfortable and so unstimulating is actually like a sign of how deep the intimacy is and how deep like the comfort is. Yeah,
absolutely. So let's jump back a little bit. What were some of the struggles that you went through that got you into this personal development world and started exploring that?
So I mean, I was always kind of interested in this stuff, even when I was a teenager. I talk about in the book, like I had a pretty miserable adolescence, you know, broken family, and got in a lot of trouble at school, and you know, got kicked out of school, lost friends. And so I kind of, by the time I was like 15 or 16, I really found, I guess, my safe haven in music and books, you know? And I became intensely interested in just all kind of like psychological, philosophical topics from a very early age. And then it was when I was in my 20s that I started getting into the self-help thing. You know, it's like, oh, cool, I can learn how to like make more friends and make money while I sleep. You know, that sounds great. I'll go buy this book. And so it was always a very like big part of my life, like just forever, I guess.
Yeah. I've recently discovered it in the last like few years, like really been on a track. I've always been kind of I've been self-aware to a certain extent, and then did some like actual some work a few years ago and really opened my eyes to a whole different world.
Yeah.
It's a whole different possibility.
Yeah. One thing I say a lot, that there are two types of people in the self-help world, which is there are people there who are there to fix a problem, and it's usually because like something painful happened and they're there to like get advice and see how to move forward. And then there are people who it's just like a hobby, like there's something about it that it's fun for them. For me, it's like it's kind of the intellectual side of it. It's the concepts around it, the psychology of it. But for other people, it's like it becomes their community and their network and
absolutely. How would you say it's helped you navigate your creative career?
I think, it's funny because it's something I very much fell into. Like I didn't set out planning to be like a personal development author, you know, like I never thought I was going to be a writer. I started when I graduated school. In 2007, so it was just in time for like the worst job market of the last 80 years. so it's like I finished school and it's like, hey, guess what? There are no jobs like anywhere. And so I read Tim Ferriss's book, 4 Hour Work Week, and I was like, well, shit, I know how to make a web page, like. And I have nothing. I'm already broke. Like I have nothing to lose. So I kind of just went for it. And then back then, this is like 2008, 2009. Back then, blogging was kind of like all the rage. It was like if you had a website and you were trying to make money with it or get traffic, like everybody was like, you got to have a blog. Like
right.
It's just a thing. Everybody. It's like having like an Instagram account now or a YouTube channel. Like back then, everybody had to have a blog. So. I had a blog and I started writing on it. And I guess maybe 3 years into it, I discovered that I was bad at selling stuff, but I was a really good writer. Like, people liked the writing. Like, nobody was buying anything I was trying to do. Like, I wasn't making any money, but people really liked my writing. And so that's when I decided, like, hey, like, maybe this is the thing I should be doing.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah.
So how did you actually make that transition to, I don't know, what were you doing before to pay the bills? And then how did you transition to actually making money with your writing?
Yeah. I mean, early on, I mean, I was trying a lot of like embarrassing spammy shit. Like, I mean, in the beginning, I was just like, I just want to make enough money to like pay rent and, you know, drink beer with my friends. And, and I barely even got to that point. I mean, early on I was doing, so I knew how to do like some basic web design.
Yeah.
So I was doing some freelance work early on. Most of the sites that I set up or tried to set up, it was mostly like affiliate type stuff. So, you know, I'd find some niche and build like a really spammy website and try to get ranked on SEO really quickly, and then like push like some crappy supplement or something, and I'd make like $30. You know, it would be like 3 months of work, and then I'd make like $30. You know, it was just like completely like uneconomical, and it was awful. And then the thing that I created that started to kind of take off was a dating advice site. And actually that was the blog that started to take off.
Got it.
And so originally with that, I was doing some kind of like affiliate stuff and some consulting. And then it was after a couple of years, I was like, you know what, I should like write a book and create a course and do all that stuff. So that was like my first, I guess, functional business.
Got it. Did you ever have a real job?
For about 2 months.
Really?
Yeah.
What was this real job?
I worked at a bank in Boston.
Awesome.
Yeah, an investment bank. And I don't know why. Like, I don't know why. Honestly, it's one of those things I look back on. I was like, what was I thinking? But yeah, I was miserable. I was completely miserable, and I hated it. And you know, I left to go do the internet thing, which is probably better because I probably would have gotten fired eventually anyway.
It's so funny. We all have our like jobs. I used to be a Cutco knife salesman.
What?
Yeah.
How does that happen?
You know, going through college, I went to community college, and there was these little flyers, and it's like, oh, make money in your part time. Little do you know, you go and you sign up for this thing, you go to this orientation, and they're like, you can make this much money, you can make your own schedule selling knives.
Yeah.
And somehow I made it through like a year of selling like $50,000 worth of knives.
It's funny the ideas you get in college. I feel like the education system maybe isn't geared very well to like pushing creatives in the right direction. Like, even if you like go major in like a creative, like if you go and like do art or like, you know, photography or theater or whatever, like I feel like they're like all the people, like I never knew I was even a good writer. Like,
yeah,
I like no teacher ever told me that my entire life. and like all the kids that I know in school who like majored in English and creative writing, like they're like, I don't know, selling insurance or something. So like I don't know what's going on. Like I don't know how this happens, and how did I think that investment banking was gonna like make any sense whatsoever.
I feel like that's the like all the popular kids in high school and college all end up just like doing nothing.
So it's the Al Bundy effect.
Yeah. All the dorks and the nerds, we all like discovered this whole plane of life that's completely different.
Our secret talents that nobody knew about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So after you started selling all this stuff, how did you get into like the publishing world, like getting, making money with that?
So the dating thing started doing pretty well, and then I self-published a book. It's called Models Attract Women Through Honesty, and it was basically, the idea of the book was I felt like 95% of the advice for men out there at the time was just like garbage. It was it was basically like, here's how to like, here, let's try to manipulate women into sleeping with us together, you know? And
Yeah.
and I felt very strongly at the time that like there needed to be some sort of like kind of emotionally healthy version of like advice for men, on just how to behave and how to treat women. And so I wrote that, and it blew up. It became really successful. And that was kind of the first time of like where I was like, oh shit, I could like be a writer, you know?
Yeah.
So from there, I took my site, and I instead of just writing about like dating and relationships, I started writing about just personal development in general. That was like 2013. And then from like 2013 through 2015, the site just blew up. I mean, by mid 2015, it was doing like 2 to 2.5 million visitors each month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And like at that point, like publishers are like banging on your door in the middle of the night, you know, because like,
it's amazing.
Yeah, once you start hitting those numbers and people find out about them, you start getting a lot of interest. And so it was around that time too that I had started having the ideas that would form Subtle Art. And so grabbed an agent and went out there and saw, you know, what the market thought of me, what the publishers thought of me.
You know, just grabbed an agent, no big deal.
Yeah, right. It's just like, I think I'll take this one.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it's amazing. I love your work, and I mean, I was telling you earlier, I've heard, I read The Subtle Art, and then when I started diving into your site, and I was like, wow, there's so many great articles, there's so many, and then I found Models, and I read that book. It was really great, and it feels like it's like the how to not give a fuck for men book, which is great. It's great. I think it's really helpful. And you got so many great articles, and your site's great as well. So what advice would you give to other aspiring writers to get their name out there?
Yeah. So like one of my top pieces of I guess like I would say like meta advice, and I think this goes for any creative out there, especially if you're going to try to build a career like online, like using the internet to like market yourself. Probably my number one piece of advice, and like everybody hates hearing this, but like you need to study marketing and branding. Like it's just non-negotiable. And people hate hearing this because, everybody, as creatives, we all think our ideas are brilliant, and we all think that like the world should like stop in their tracks and listen to us. But the fact of the matter is that, creating something great is half the battle. The other half is finding a way, is basically meeting people where they are in their lives and in the world, and understanding how are you going to get them to stop and look, and at least give you that first like 3 seconds for you to win them over. And, one of the big breakthroughs for me, it was funny because I started buying a bunch of books on like branding and copywriting and marketing and stuff like that. And originally it was for my business. But then once I really got into the writing, I started seeing how understanding all that stuff was helping me. Like if you can brand an idea, like, so for instance, the only difference between me, like there are basically no new ideas in Subtle Art. Like 90% of it is some like remix or rehashed version of, or like even just retelling stories or research that other people have done.
Right.
The reason Subtle Art is like sold over 1 million copies, been number one in the New York Times, is because I've packaged that, both in terms of my own voice, my own creative voice, but also like understanding, what gets somebody, like what makes somebody stop and pay attention to something, like what makes an idea exciting to learn about versus like some boring academic paper that nobody reads, And so, and the same concepts apply if you're doing like visual stuff, you're doing photography, like you have to understand like, how can you like brand your work, like create like kind of like a concept or a story around your work, that people can easily understand and like latch onto. And it's a very like unsexy topic learning about it, but it's so practical.
But you've definitely mastered that art, and I think that's one of the things I really noticed about looking at your site is you have like these great article names that draw you in, but they're not clickbaity.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. I'm like, oh, how smart the smartphone is the new cigarette, which is, it's great, because I'm like, oh, that's kind of where I'm at right now is like, you talked about this a little earlier, but like getting off that, the smartphone drug and really focusing on the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
What inspired that article?
Probably just me spending like an entire morning on Facebook and being like, what the fuck am I doing with my life?
Every day.
Oh, I think I remember. I think I went to a dinner or something. It was one of those, and we've all at this point we've all been at this dinner. You go to this dinner. There's like, say there's 8 people there, and at any given time, like 5 of them are on their phones, and like nobody's listening to each other. Nobody's paying attention to the conversation. Like people are losing track of the conversation and interrupting each other, and it's just because everybody's on their fucking phone the entire time. And like I remember I started thinking about it, and I was like, like just somebody like being at dinner with somebody and just them pulling out their phone and like checking something, it like not only does it like remove them from the conversation, but it actually distracts me, because now like the person I'm talking to, now I have to like pay attention to the thing that the person I'm talking to is paying attention. And so I thought about that, and I'm like, yeah, it's like secondhand smoke. Like this person I'm hanging out with has a bad habit, but now I'm suffering because like my attention is now suffering because the guy I'm with like can't keep his fucking phone in his pants.
Yeah.
Which sounds funny too. And so that's when the whole cigarette thing kicked in. I'm like, yeah, it's like attention pollution. Like you really like pollute the environment you're in if you're on your phone all the time.
100%.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, that happens in LA all the time. You're just everybody's like on their phones.
Yeah. Let's say this, it's worse in some places than others.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
It's so true, but I mean, you get sucked into it. It's like almost, it's kind of rude at a certain point.
Totally.
Maybe you set like, oh, phone break. Okay, wait, but if somebody's just picking up your phone, I leave my phone on silent, do not disturb now, because and I'm thinking about just other ways of getting rid of it. But.
We were talking about this too, how this is becoming like a new cultural thing. And I think a new facet of that cultural thing is like people are starting to decide what values they have around smartphones and social media. So like for me, one thing I've decided for myself in the last year or two is like if I'm hanging out with somebody one-on-one, like if I'm at dinner, like let's say you and I go get dinner, like we don't really know each other, and all of a sudden like 5 minutes into dinner you pull out your phone and you start texting people, like that to me, I find that, like you said, it's rude. Like it's something I've decided. I'm like, oh, I'm probably not going to hang out with this guy again. And I think a lot of people are making those decisions for themselves, and what it's doing is it's like drawing social lines. I had a friend. This story's awesome. I had a friend. He just recently became single again. He's an older guy. He's like 41 or something. And he's dating again for the first time in like 10 years. And he went on a date. He took a girl to a movie, and she was younger than him. I think she was like 30. And they get in the movie, and like she just pulls out her phone and just starts like texting people in the middle of the movie, and it's bothering the hell out of him. And so finally, after she does it like 3 times, like he kind of leans over and he's like, "Hey, do you mind putting your phone away? Like just wait till the movie's over." And she kind of like gives him this look, and she's like, "Really? Are you like my boss or something?" And he got up and left. Like he just fucking walked out and didn't say anything. Just like walked out, got in his car, and went home. And he said that she like texted him like, "Where'd you go?" I told him, I was like, "Dude, you're my hero, man. Like if I'm ever single again, like I hope I can do the same thing in the same situation."
That's amazing.
Because he's like I immediately knew like there's no potential for this relationship, like none. Like this is just not gonna happen.
Yeah, it's a drug, but that's an amazing story. I fucking love that. That's so good, so good. We were talking about, and this almost like translates into the creative topic that we were talking about, and how do you feel social media has drawn or taken away from your creative states?
Well, I find, one thing I've learned just in the last couple of years is like to really think deeply and creatively. Like you need a certain amount there's a quantity of time of like uninterrupted focus that's necessary to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've noticed is just those constant minor interruptions, they add up really quickly, so it's like, let's say I'm sitting down and I'm writing for a morning or whatever. If I check, like if I get a text or something, that's probably fine. If I'm checking email once, that's fine. But like when I get in that cycle, and I think everybody at this point knows what the cycle is, which is like Facebook, email, Instagram, back to Facebook, email, Instagram, and it's just like clearing the notifications constantly. If I do that, or if I stop like every 10 minutes and do that, it just destroys, like I could sit there and try to write all day. Like it just destroys any ability to like develop those like deep artistic insights.
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of things do you do to get out of that?
So I just started writing my next book, and one of the things, like it got so bad, like I couldn't write at home. Like there was just too much distraction around. And so one thing I started doing, I've got a good friend of mine, he's working on his PhD thesis, and he has an office at a university here in town, and that office also has no Wi-Fi. So I was like, I told him about this, and he's like, dude, just come to he's like, I'm literally in my office like 12 hours a day working on my dissertation. Like he's like, come down anytime. And so I went down there, and oh my God, I got so much work done. Like I wrote like 30 pages. It was amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so that's like just physically removing myself from distraction has been like, I mean, it's pretty extreme, but it's like, it's been really helpful. I've also downloaded, like there's some apps like Freedom and stuff like that like you can block certain sites. And
I was just looking to this app called Moment. For your phone. It apparently tells you, it monitors how many times you open your phone, how long you spend on your phone. Yeah.
Oh, God, that's scary.
I know, right? But maybe we should just like open a new workspace that has it's like got an electronic shield around it.
It's like a Wi-Fi free. Yeah.
Wi-Fi free. Maybe it's like the get shit done
I
workspace.
remember there was I heard about, I don't remember where it was, but there was a bar that opened, and what they did is they created glasses where the glass in the bottom was uneven, and the only way you could keep your glass from like tipping over was putting it on top of your phone.
That's awesome.
So, and then there are other bars, I think, where it's like they literally have like a no cell phone policy. Like, they're like, if you pull out your phone, you'll be asked to leave.
That's a good.
Yeah, I think that's in Austin. I think is where I saw that. But
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it.
You got to get extreme, man. I mean, this is.
Yeah, it's a new wave, a new culture, new technology, and
it's a growing issue. For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I did, I just got a new phone last week, and I intentionally was like, I'm not downloading Facebook, I'm not downloading Twitter, I'm just not even gonna put it on the phone.
Yeah,
if somebody really needs me, they can fucking call me.
That's true. It's true. Let's jump back just a little bit. We're finish our conversation around the branding. What books did you read that influenced and helped you learn these branding ideas?
Yeah. So like the quick and dirty book that I always recommend to people is there's a book called The 22 Immutable Laws of Branding. It's super simple. You can read it in an afternoon. Tons of pictures and examples. So you like, if you're not a big, like if you don't love reading, like it's a really great breakdown of like understanding why things are memorable and why things are like grab your attention. So that's a good one. I think for writers out there, like I think every writer should at least read one book on copywriting. You're gonna vomit in your mouth like when you read it because it's like it's all the stuff you hate. It's like, you know, it's the copywriting is all this stuff like these 3 strange tricks to get you to lose weight without even trying, you know, like stuff like that everybody hates. I think there's a famous one called Breakthrough Advertising, and there's another one. God, I'm trying to remember. Anyway, Ogilvy has a really famous one. But like the reason copywriting matters is because like a good copywriting book explains what like holds people's attention in words. Like what word, like how do you grab somebody's attention with a sentence, and then how do you hold it? And how do you keep it over the course of like paragraphs? And so it's one of these things, you know, all this stuff like branding, marketing, copywriting, like they're tools, right? Like it's like you can use them for evil and you can use them for good. And I think, you know, it's no mistake. Like it's not a coincidence. Some of the greatest and most successful writers of the last century actually started as copywriters. And it's because it trains you to like understand human attention and understand, you know, how to create certain emotions in a reader. Yeah.
And that was the Ogilvy book that you said you read?
So I can't remember. So Breakthrough Advertising is like a really famous one. Cool. And a basic one. And then there's a few like really famous ones. They're all written in like the 50s.
Right.
No, but like Ogilvy was one, and then there's one by Claude Hopkins that's really famous too.
Cool.
I don't remember any of the names.
And then something, in terms of like the overall packaging of a project, is there anything that you read about those?
You know, when it comes to like design stuff, I'm not. I mean, the branding will touch on it a lot. You know, design stuff, it's always been more just kind of like my art. I've gone off like my artistic eye, but like the branding stuff should cover that. Pretty well.
Cool. So what is your, you know, when you're jumping into a project, either whether it's an article or a book, what does your creative process look like?
Yeah. I usually set aside 3 to 4 hours of like focused work. And you know, early on in my career, I could just sit down and do it. But like, I think these days, and I don't know why, maybe it takes more effort. Maybe I'm old. Maybe I'm more distracted than I used to be. I really need to schedule it. Like it's like, this is my writing time. Everything's off. Phone's in the other room. You know, everything's blocked on my computer. Wife knows not to bother me. You know, it's really just like pure focused work. And then generally I already have an idea of what I want to write or like what I want to accomplish. I always set my goals. So I don't set a goal around like word count. Like a lot of writers try to do word count. And what I found is back when I used to do word count, like, so I'd set a goal like, okay, I want to do 1,000 words a day. What I found is that I would have like 300 or 400 good words. And then I'd be like, the last 30 minutes I'd be like, oh shit, I need 600 more words. And so I just write a bunch of garbage just to hit my 1,000 word count. And what I realized is that when you go back and revise or edit, like having those 600 words that were just crap actually creates more work for yourself. Because now you actually have to figure out like, all right, is any of this worth keeping? How does this going to fit in with the other stuff? Like, so I decided that it's definitely a quality over quantity thing. And so for me, it's I judge my session by really just like, am I getting like some focused output? You know, so if it ends up only being a couple hundred words or a couple thousand, or I'm just getting a good outline done, I try not to judge it too much. And I try to let everybody around me know that like, hey, this article might come tomorrow. It might come in a week. Like, I have no idea.
Nice. When you sit down to write, are you always like inspired and you have something to write about, or is there certain times you're just like sitting down, forcing yourself to write and come up with something?
I think sometimes you have to. I mean, especially with a book, like there are just going to be days where like you don't want to deal with it. But it's such a large piece of work that like you really need to sit down and force yourself to some days. The thing though is that I always look for, like, one thing I learned years and years ago is that if I'm not excited about something, then like the readers aren't going to be excited either. So like somehow that comes through in whatever I'm putting together. So if I find myself working on a section that I'm just like, God, this is tedious, or it's just giving me a lot of problems, like when I'm reading it and thinking about it, then I usually just try to delete it or get rid of it, because if I don't like it, then nobody else is.
Yeah. Where do you typically draw your inspiration from when coming up with articles?
Mostly stuff that goes on in my life. So there are 3 places. 1, books I read. 2, stuff that goes on, like problems I have in my own life. One of like the big misconceptions I get a lot is like, people email me and they're like, who gave you all the answers? Like, since when are you the expert? And I'm like, dude, I wrote about this because like I suck at it too. Like I'm just as screwed up as you are. That's why I wrote this thing. So my own life, my own issues, and then the third is, I get like tons and tons of reader email. So if there are certain themes that are popping up consistently in reader email, like I'll try to address that.
Yeah. And you started with when you wrote because I know you started the book with the subtle art with an article. Mm-hmm. How did that article spark?
So the subtle art of not giving a fuck was, actually the idea for the article was originally just the word fuck. Like I thought it would be really funny I wanted to like write an article that used the word fuck as many times as possible and in as many offensive ways as possible, but still give like really good advice. And I just thought that would be really funny if like you just had this, because people are always like, I'm vulgar on my site and people are always complaining like, if you cleaned up your language, like more people would read you. And I hate that. Like it just got annoying at some point. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to write the most vulgar article I can possibly come up with, but I'm also going to put really, really good life advice inside it. So that people it's just their heads are going to explode. Like they're not even going to know what to do. And so I did that, I think January 2015. And, man, the thing just exploded. Like I think it got shared on Facebook over 1 million times. Like wow. I think 11 million people, it got 11 million page views or something like that. Like it was nuts. Like my site was crashing constantly. It was one of the most viral articles like I've ever seen.
It's awesome.
And the funny thing was I had already been working on my book, on Subtle Art, the book. I had already been working on it for like a year. And one of the problems was I had all these great ideas and concepts in it, and I was having conversations with my agent at the time. Like we were like, well, we have all these I have all these great ideas and concepts, but I don't know, like, what's the title going to be? Like, what's the big idea that's going to kind of like carry people through the book?
Yeah.
And so when the Subtle Art article like went crazy, like my agent was like, you should definitely call it the Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And I was like, well, okay, screw it. So, that's the new chapter 1, and then everything else comes after. So, the first chapter of the book was actually I think it was the last to be written.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. How long did it take you to knock out the book after that?
It's such a funny question. So the first draft of the book took over a year. It took like 15 months maybe.
Oh, wow.
And it's interesting because I kind of did it out of order that most authors do it. And I wrote the first draft first, and then I went and got an agent and a publisher. And a lot of that just worked out due to like the blog's growth. So when I started the book, I kind of just assumed like I might self-publish it. We'll see what happens. And then the blog grew so much that I ended up getting an agent and a publisher.
Yeah.
And so the second draft was then, once I was signed and had a book deal, all I had to do was the second draft. And so the second draft took 3 or 4 months. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So now, I think in this world of so much external validation, and I mean, we all give way too many fucks about what people think, right?
Yeah.
Like, what would be the mental, if you were to give somebody advice, what would be the mental process of walking somebody through the idea of getting them to not give any fucks about what other people think?
So this is like the perennial question, right? How do I stop caring what people think? Like, how do I stop worrying about what people think?
100%.
Yeah. The thing is that it is part of, like, what makes it, if you didn't care what anybody thought at any time, you would by definition be a psychopath. Like, that is literally what a psychopath is. It's somebody who has no empathy for anybody whatsoever. And so, like, a point I always try to make is like, all right, the goal here is the goal here is not to stop caring. You know, like, obviously you care what your family thinks and what your best friend thinks. Like, that's why you have a family and a best friend. Like, that's why they're there. My argument is always it's not that caring that what people think is not the problem. It's the prioritization of what people think. Mm-hmm. So the problem comes is when we make what other people think value number one. Like, it is the most important thing in our life. Mm-hmm. And so the solution is not getting rid of it. The solution is simply making other things more important. Developing other values. And this can happen for a few reasons. Like, putting other people's opinion number one can happen for a few reasons. One, it can be you just don't have anything else. Yeah. You just have nothing else to do, or nothing else important going on in your life. Another reason is that you had a bunch of, like, really painful experiences early in your life, and so you're extremely sensitive to what other people think. Mm-hmm. And so there's different solutions. Mileage is going to vary for each person, but, like, the basic solution is, like, finding other things that are more important, and then also putting your opinion of yourself at the same level as if not higher than, what other people care about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And not being run by it.
Yes.
Got it. So now, how would you take this same idea and translate this into, or just give advice for somebody pushing through and growing their career in creativity?
Yeah. I think creativity is weird because, like, we're all influenced by each other. Mm-hmm. And I think it's good to be influenced. Like, I think it's healthy. But you can't, there's, like, a certain line at some point where you're just mimicking. And then that becomes a problem. So I think it's useful to, like, and especially early on, I think mimicking is maybe more useful. Like, if you're like really young, or you're still in school, or you're still trying to find yourself, like, it can actually be a useful exercise to, like, mimic somebody else's work. I remember back when I was really, like, first giving writing a go, like, I actually sat down. I was like, all right, I'm going to do a blog post. Like, what if Hemingway wrote a blog post? I'm going to try to write like Hemingway for a post. And I saw how that felt, and didn't like it. And so I stopped doing it, but I did that with a few writers, and it wasn't necessarily like, oh, David Foster Wallace was an amazing writer, so if I write just like him, I'll be amazing too. It was more like, what does this feel like? Mm-hmm. Does this feel good to me? Like, what are the little things that I can kind of steal from him and add to my own palette? And so I think that's kind of the healthy way to do it, is, like, pick and choose little things from people you admire, and then recombine them in a completely new way.
Yeah. How do you handle feedback and criticism with your work?
So that's another thing. Early on, honestly, like, I think this is a really important message to anybody who wants to have a creative career. Like, you are going to have to get desensitized to it. Like it's just, I think it's just a fact of the career. You're gonna be criticized. You're gonna have haters. You're gonna have trolls, and it's gonna suck. It's gonna, like, the first time it happens, it's gonna ruin your day. It's gonna, like, you're gonna question your confidence. You're gonna, like, it's gonna really suck.
Yeah.
But as it happens more, you get used to it. Like, and especially the more successful you get, like, this is the weird thing, is the more successful you get, the more haters you get. And so the percentage of hate never changes. It's just like, you know, when I had 100 readers, like, one of them would hate on me, and then it's like, now I have 1 million readers, and so 1,000 of them hate on me. You know, so so you would think that 1,000 would feel much worse than the one, but it doesn't. It's like, it feels exactly the same. So you just get used to it after a while. You can't please everybody.
100%. Now, you have an article on your site that talk about creativity. Yeah. And what I resonated with this because there's something, it's like after you see a certain amount of success, the creative career gets harder and harder because you're so much more critical on yourself. Yeah. Of like the standard of the quality. Yeah. How do you deal with that? Like growing yourself from where you're at now, especially because Subtle Art blew up and now you're on to the next project.
Yeah. It fucks with your head. Like, one thing I think that happens when you start out, and it's very useful and it feels very good, is like when you start out, you want every new project to be more successful than the last, or to be better, or explore some new idea. Like, you want there to be development. Mm-hmm. You know, this like kind of upwards curve. And when you're starting out, it's pretty easy to do that, or it's much easier to do that, I should say. None of this is ever easy, but there comes a point where it's like keeping that upward trajectory going becomes extremely difficult. You know, it's, if you think about somebody like, you know, the Beatles or Metallica or something, it's like, how do you go up from there? Like, everybody kind of complains like, oh, Metallica got crappy in the 90s. Like, of course they did. They sold like 100 million albums. Like you can't sustain that forever. Yeah. Like, you have to go somewhere else. Otherwise, like, you have to reinvent yourself. And so I think the game kind of changes once you start getting into those higher levels of success. The game changes because there's just simply no trajectory left. Yeah. There's nowhere above you left to go. Like, to sell more books than Subtle Art would literally require, like, one of the best selling books of all time. Right. And which is just not going to happen. Like, I'm going to be really honest with, like, it's not going to happen. And so it's been fucking with my head coming to terms with that, knowing that whatever my next book is, it's probably not going to do this well. Yeah. And, you know, on one level, that's fine. Like, I don't need commercial validation to, like, tell me I'm doing a good job. But on the other hand, there's something that's, like, bums me out about that. Yeah. You know, because there's like, it's hard to, you know, there's something exciting there, like, that potential is no longer there. Yeah. You know, of like besting the last thing I did, or like getting more accolades or whatever. Like, it's over. And so I think that I've had to spend some time kind of getting my head straight about, like, why I'm doing this, why am I going to do the next book? Like, you know, finding those new trajectories, you know, finding something else to try to outdo myself with. Yeah. Instead of just like popularity or book sales or whatever. Yeah.
But maybe people, I think, not that you have to top it, but maybe there's, you know, I think especially with a lot of bands, if you really like a band, you almost like whatever they put out at a certain point. So I think there's some merit to that. Who knows?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I'm not worried about it. Yeah. It's more just like one way I described it to a friend who's also an author recently is I said, like, look, like, in my head, right, I was like, I'm going to be an author for like the next 40 years, and I'm probably going to write 10, 15 books. And over the course of those 40 years, I hope to accomplish the following, like, you know, sell at least 1 million books and be a New York Times bestseller, and, you know, yada yada yada. Yeah. Subtle art basically accomplished all those things in like 6 months. and so I literally had like, I freaked out this year, and I was like, well, now what do I have to look forward to? Like, now what do I work towards? And it was a real mind fuck. It really was. Like, it was, and I told my friend, I said, like, I think I needed time to actually like grieve the loss of my dreams. Like,
interesting.
The dreams happened, and it was amazing, and I celebrated, and I felt great. But then there were a few months there of like sadness.
Yeah.
Like sadness and just lack of motivation, because it's like my dreams are gone. Like they're literally all gone because they all happened.
Yeah.
And so like I need time to like find new dreams.
Yeah.
And create different types of dreams now. And so I feel like I'm just now getting to a place where I'm starting to do that, and sure enough, the excitement, the right came back.
Cool.
As soon as I started doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have a new book project coming.
Yeah. I mean,
like
it's too early. Like, I literally just finished the outline. So it's like super early. And the nice thing too, and the nice thing about the success of Subtle Art is that it's basically bought me tons of time, so there's no like, no publisher is going to be like, hey, you agreed to a May 1st deadline.
Right.
It's like, they're going to put out whatever I create. So, I've earned a spot of luxury in the publishing industry where I can basically just do whatever I want to.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm taking time with the new book, and I really want to do, I guess the trajectory, the next level that I want to reach with the next book is more, I want to make it, hit the next level, I guess, like intellectually or like philosophically, like make it a much more like involved and deeper book, I guess, than Subtle Art.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Is there any topics that you think that the culture needs to shift on, or just like that you that would shift culture in a certain sense of where we're at today?
It's funny, that was a big motivation for Subtle Art. I really thought somebody needed to like put a knife into the back of the whole positivity thing. Yeah. And like the unrealistic standards for like positivity in life and happiness. And so that was a big motivation for Subtle Art. With this one, I don't know if there's like a big cultural like, this is what the world needs this time. This one, it's more, it started out as kind of a book about relationships, and not just intimate relationships, but just like relationships in general. But it's since gotten much more broad than that. So I think it's more timeless in that sense. Yeah. Like, it's not, Subtle Art was very much written for a moment. Like, I do think the concepts in Subtle Art will last for a long time, but it was also written for a moment. This one, I think, is just more like,
love that.
Yeah.
Cool. So a couple quick questions before we wrap up. Do you have a morning routine?
A really bad one. It's literally wake up. I usually don't have an alarm, but I usually end up around 9. Drink a Red Bull and read a book.
Red Bull.
Yeah.
Nice.
I love caffeine. Like, I'm a caffeine fiend, but I hate coffee and I hate tea.
All right.
So, and I tried pills, but like, it's not the same.
That's hilarious. Hilarious.
Yeah. Sugar-free Red Bull and read a book for an hour. And then I start working.
Nice. What would be your top 3 book recommends at the moment?
So the one I'm reading right now, which is probably having a bad influence on me because it makes me want to write like an 800-page book. It's a book called Gödel, Escher and Bach.
Oh.
It was written by, it's one of like the first books about like artificial intelligence. It was written in like the 70s.
Oh, really?
But it's basically, the book is basically looking at how our brain creates meaning. Period. And then how would you like create a computer that could create meaning for itself?
Wow.
Yeah, and
Sounds fascinating.
but it's written in a really fun way. So like he uses Bach, the music composer, Escher, the artist, and then Gödel, the mathematician, as kind of like he uses their work as like examples, but also like metaphors for a lot of the concepts he talks about. And it's like 800 pages and super nerdy and philosophical, and so I'm happy.
I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's great. What else am I reading right now? Or what have I read?
Or overall.
Yeah, what have I read recently? So, Denial of Death by Ernest Becker. It's the book that I talk about in the last chapter of Subtle Art. That's an all-time favorite. And then, let's see. I guess I'll say Sapiens by Harari, just because
good one.
Because everybody says Sapiens. It's like the cool thing to do now. So
That's so Sapiens.
It's so Sapiens. That's so 2016.
Such a brilliant book, though.
It is. It's fantastic. I mean, it's becoming like recommending Sapien is like becoming a cliche, but like it is for a reason. It's because everybody's recommending it all the time.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. But well worth it. Worth it. So one last question I love to ask all my guests is, what does the phrase "live inspiration" mean to you?
Live inspiration. I would say it basically means just feeling an enthusiastic commitment to whatever you're doing or working on, or the people you're with.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. So where can people find you on the interwebs?
MarkManson.net, and then Facebook.com/MarkMansonNet, one word. But don't message me because I'm trying to quit Facebook.
quit the addiction.
I'm trying to quit you, Facebook. It's so hard.
It's like a song.
Yeah, it's like somebody should do that. Somebody should totally do that.
Love it. Well, I appreciate you coming out, making the time, and just acknowledge you for what you're putting out in the world.
Thanks, man.
Love
Appreciate it.
Yeah.